So, firstly, I've got apologies from Councillor Stewart. Any other apologies? Okay. So, apology from Councillor Stewart and record one for Councillor Bryan if the meeting's still going at 3:30-ish. Okay. Councillor Barnett will move. Seconded Councillor Mealings. Any discussion? All in favour, aye. Contrary, declare it carried. Any conflicts of interest for recording? You're a council appointee on TKTT. You'd like to declare to record. Well,
I think given the potential nature of the business, and you might consider that nearer the time, I think you have to act in the best interests of the entities that's in front of you at the time, and if you do have that conflict sitting there because of a transaction or events that might occur, then that warrants due consideration. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't wish to record the conflict? Okay. Jim, we got no language in relation to No, so it's not coming now. All right. Just before I come to acknowledgements, I'll come to acknowledgements first. I'd like to just record that Superintendent John Price, the District Commander of Police, received an ONZM, so that's a New Zealand Order of Merit for services to the police and the community. And whilst John isn't a resident in the district, we certainly have a lot to do with him with various forums we're at. His brother is, may not know, is a principal of Swannanoa School, so, and I believe he was a teacher before he went into the police, so from what I understand, he's a thoroughly nice gentleman in the engagements we have with him, and there was quite a write-up there, including working with post the mosque shootings as well, something he had a lot to do with, so thoroughly deserving of that recognition of an ONZM. Also, I'd like to recognise that Tikahaka Tuatara Trust celebrated their 10th anniversary and held an open day on Sunday, so it's really great to see the progress the Trust's made in these last 10 years. I think personally they've made very real progress since they've had Greg Burns on board. There's been a lot of work before that, so I know Councillor Atkinson had been a long-term trustee, and now Councillor Blackie, so thank you both for the contribution, your contribution that's helped shape those last 10 years. Also just like to record very sadly the passing of Des Shoemaker. Des was a former Oxford-Ear County Councillor, Oxford-Ear Ward Councillor 2001 to 2004. He's also a staff member of the council in the 90s, and his wife is presently on staff, so it was really sad, and his funeral service was held yesterday. So I'd just like us to stand and have a moment's silence for Des. Thank you. Okay. So we come now to item 4, which is the members' register of interests. Tab 3. So that's just updated that record, Adrian, isn't it? Really, if any members have any, are we noting this, receiving this? Is this going to be a regular item on there? Okay. So it's just for noting, no action required. If any member has any changes they'd like, just communicate that directly to Sarah rather than here at the meeting, but that's what's recorded there. Okay. So we come to confirmation of minutes. First, so 5.1, pages 14 to 18. It's a recommendation. These are the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of December. So I'm prepared to move. Move to Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Doody. Oh, okay, no, you weren't either. Councillor Redmond. Yep. Any discussion? All those in favour, aye. Contrary, declare that carried. I'll come to 5.2 and 5.3 when we're in public excluded later. Are there any matters arising anyone wishes to make, to raise? Okay, so we now come to deputations and presentations. First is item 6.1, Buckley's Road residents' traffic concerns. I'd like to invite Marianne Rouse, please, to come forward. Thank you, Marianne. So Marianne's going to speak about residents' concerns with traffic on Buckley's Road. So you've already mastered the system there. That's excellent. So the button, you've got the button pressed. You're good to go. So up to 10 minutes, including questions. I'll give a bit of leeway there, but it's an indicative timetable. So we look forward to hearing from you. And now, members. Tab 5, item 6.1 has background material that was received in advance. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. The Mayor has already introduced me. I am a resident of Buckley's Road, and the other petition organisers, Grant and Mark McAlpine, wish to apologise for not being present due to prior engagements. We wish to formally present the District Council with the petition of residents and ratepayers of Buckley's Road, which was taken during November 2020, specifically regarding speeding traffic, volume of traffic, investigations into alleviating the above two issues, and a period of time for the investigation of these issues to be carried out. As Mr. Mayor has said, you already have received copies of the data. I really can't stress strongly enough how the depth of feeling and concern of residents on Buckley's Road. It's a residential street and it is multi-generational. There are a huge number of young families in that area. Multiple individual complaints have been laid with New Zealand Police and the District Council regarding the speed of vehicles. However, due to their intermittent nature, no real action or progress has been gained for the residents and ratepayers. I'd now like to specifically talk to some of the points in here, so if councillors have questions of me, I'm more than happy to try to answer them.
Thank you.
The first part of the data is 85% of houses canvassed responded to the petition. So 50 signatures were achieved from 34 homes. There is one business directly on Buckley's Road, and although they expressed concern regarding the lack of street markings for parking, they did not participate in the petition. All participants were very thankful and genuinely pleased that we were taking time to hear their issues and collectively present this information to Council. Buckley's Road residents do not wish to see their street being required to meet a crash fatality criteria, and we would urge the Mayor and councillors to give due consideration and work proactively towards a suitable resolution to the issues. Some of the solutions or suggestions that were put forward by residents were speed bumps, a pedestrian crossing, chicanes to narrow the traffic flow, and potentially stop signs at either end of Buckley's Road instead of just a give way sign to slow traffic down. 84% were concerned about the volume of traffic. There's a large number of truck and trailer units now using that street. There are incomplete road markings on Buckley's Road, and some of those road markings have been obliterated due to recent roadworks down there, particularly outside of the Fabric of Society shop. So therefore, when you have vehicles parked customers to go in there, they're not actually using the car parking spacing. They're using the road, and if you come off Coronation Street, it becomes very tight. "100% of all residents canvassed were concerned about the speed of vehicles. And primarily, they're concerned about children's safety, pedestrian safety, the potential for lowering the speed limit on the road, and the speeding occurs at all times. The estimation, and we're not there to clock people in vehicles, but honestly, a number of people commented on the fact that they felt that the cars were doing between 80 and 100 kilometres an hour. Again, 100% of the people who participated in the petition are adamant that there should be an investigation into what's going on down that street. Again, as we say, there's been a number of complaints brought to the police or to the District Council regarding Buckley's Road, and now because of the installation of the traffic lights out on Southbrook Road, Buckley's Road is now seen as a cut-through street. And we believe that Buckley's Road is the largest. I know that there's two. I know that there's Collins Street and Cone Street. However, Collins Street has got something like 7 or 8 residential homes on it. Cone Street is all fairly much industrial. Buckley's Road's residential. When you've got traffic flow and speed, it becomes a pretty nasty combination. We also have 2 schools and 2 daycare centres in very close proximity to Buckley's Road, and families use Buckley's Road as a pick-up drop-off point for their children to come through from Pearson Lane, having come across the main Southbrook Road on the pedestrian crossings. So again, we increase traffic, we increase children, you get a speeding car in there, and it's a recipe for disaster in our heads. We specifically asked for a period of time in the petition because we do not feel that putting a random police car down there in Buckley's Road is going to solve any of the problems. Nor do we think that just putting a set of counter rubbers across the road is going to solve it. We need to have a serious amount of time looking at what is going on that street. Again, better road marking would be another issue that should be looked at. The queries I've come to council with today, which I have logged with your
Governance staff.
Your staff,
Yes.
what time frame does the council envisage undertaking an investigation into the speed and traffic volume on Buckley's Road? At a previous meeting with the Mayor and the Traffic Manager in late November, it was alluded to that a roundabout being built, or technically to be built in Southbrook, and lights are to be installed at Coronation Street intersection, which fundamentally would split traffic and lessen the use of Buckley's Road as a cut-through street. However, what documented proof do we have? And because this is an idea, none of us can answer that question. But I need to have something concrete to take back to our residents. We've made a commitment to the residents in Buckley's Road to have something happen. Should the point of the installation of the roundabout and the installation of lights at Coronation Street be some months or potentially years away, what interim measures are the council going to take to alleviate these issues that are in Buckley's Road now? And specifically, what is the intention of council to do to slow the vehicles down in the street? As I said, it's my responsibility, or it's our collective responsibility, the McAlpines and myself, to return to our fellow residents in Buckley's Road with something clear and concise for them to get their heads around. It's just growing and growing and growing in Buckley's Road. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing some progress in the very near future on these issues.
Thanks, Mary. And to start with, thank you for your thoughtful presentation, and I enjoyed receiving it with the McAlpines recently. Can I just say that not a roundabout proposed, so I'm not sure where that came from, but certainly lights are being considered as a safer crossing point for the school. So roundabout is definitely not that I'm aware of. Carrie's here. I don't recall saying that at the meeting, but there's certainly lights. Just to clarify, lights are being considered and are in this year's program, Jane. So yeah, so within the next 2 years, but it's more to address a safe crossing point for the schools. So just to let you know that. What I'm proposing to do today is, after questions from colleagues, is to ask for a report to come to council to investigate options, which would also include the report going to the Rangiora Community Board, because it's within their board area. And in terms of residents down there, if they'd like to know how we're going, I'm very happy to attend a meeting anytime with residents to answer any questions they might have. So that's just at the outset what some answers to your points. We would come back to you around the timetable of that. Probably the earliest reports, probably March, April, somewhere in that area, if we were to get one. But to answer all those points, it might take a bit of time to assemble data of our own. So we'll come back to you with a timetable, assuming colleagues are in agreement with the request of a report. Questions? Councillor Doody, followed by Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much for your report. I'm just wondering, please, would your group of residents along there be prepared to look at an interim type of safety measure, just a temporary measure thing where to slow the traffic down, to see how effective it is first before spending quite a considerable amount of money on actually putting those in?
I'm sure that we would be willing to go through anything to slow vehicles down.
Yes.
I watched one come through this morning at 6:30, 7:15, and man, he was honking.
Yeah. So, these things may be on part of someone's, outside someone's property, that's the only thing, but they are only a temporary measure thing just to see how it works. So
yep.
That's just something for the staff to think about. Thank you.
Councillor Ward, followed by Councillor Lincoln.
Thank you for your concerns. Would a slowing of speed and maybe judder bars 2 or 3 down the length of the road, would that contain people from speeding and be helpful?
I think so. I think, as we've indicated with other ideas and suggestions in the data sheet that you did receive, that the majority of householders would take anything just to slow traffic down, just to slow it down.
Councillor Blake.
Hi. Yeah, my question follows directly from that. Some of the residents have suggested judder bars. Do your people realise that you swap one problem for another with judder bars, the noise, the vehicles changing gear, especially trucks and trailers, which are by far the worst, and then the vibration and the noise when they hit them. So just be careful with asking for judder bars. You may not like judder bars one little bit.
I understand your point, and potentially there is that factor. However, the cars won't be doing 80 to 100 k's, and that really is the key point. That young families are scared to let their children go down to the mailbox because of motorbikes or cars or any other vehicles that are going through, and the rate that they're going through at.
Okay. Councillor Barnett?
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Totally take on board, and I've seen exactly what you're talking about. Have you spoken at all to the residents of Coronation Street? Because obviously if they're using Buckley's as a cut through, they'll be coming through Coronation as well?
No, we've stayed specifically with residents of Buckley's Road, and included in the responses there are 2 properties whose garages come out onto Buckley's Road, which is obviously a direct impact to them.
And they're on Coronation Street corner?
No, one is at the top end by South Belt, and the other is on the corner at Highfield Lane.
Right. So do you think when we look at that area, we should look at it as an overall as well as the whole situation?
Potentially, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond?
Thank you for your very comprehensive submission. I think you presented your case really well. I guess they're both interrelated, but is your main concern the traffic volume or the speed of vehicles?
Primarily it is speed. All streets are going to have traffic. We understand that. It's just that because of the lights, cars are using Buckley's Road, Coronation Street, Buckley's Road, or vice versa. Probably not the other way around, because it's a gnarly little corner to come out on Coronation Street. But they're using that to try and beat the set of lights at South Belt. That they get through the lights at Pack and Save, and then they're diverting down Buckley's Road to get past the next set of lights.
Okay. Councillor Mealings?
Hi, Marianne, and thank you again for your great presentation. I know it can be a little bit nerve-wracking sitting up there. You mentioned heavy vehicles going through there. How often is that a big problem?
Not specifically, no, because we know that we have the flour mill at the end of the road, or the stock, sorry, it's always in my head, it's the flour mill, the stock feed company at the end of the road, and they're very good.
Right.
To be honest, they're very good. But someone mentioned it in the paperwork, so therefore it was our responsibility to put their concern down on paper.
Thank you. No, I was just wondering if it was a problem, if there was a...
No, sometimes we get the council mowers go through.
I was just thinking in terms of whether there would be any point in limiting heavy traffic down a certain stretch of the road, because the the stock feed mill can actually come out on Coronation Street from there. But yeah, no, so you just said it's not a concern, so thank you.
Not as big a concern.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson? Any further questions? Well, I think Marianne has indicated my agreement with colleagues. I think I'd like to call for a report which will come to our Utilities and Roading Committee, and we'll ask our staff and our roading managers sitting at the back here to look at all the options that have been put forward, including and especially the ones you've put in the report, which is in your presentation, which has been very comprehensive to us today, and that'll come back to both our UNR committee, which Utilities and Roading, or bring your Ashley Community Board, and we'll keep in touch with you around progress and time. As I said, the office there, if you wish to have a meeting with residents, happy to come down there and bring Joanne along with me if you'd like, and we can discuss more the concerns with residents and around our process, etc. So happy to do that if you'd like that. So just feel free to be in touch if you'd like that to happen.
Thank you very much.
That report, can we also include Coronation Street? Make sure we look at the holistic area.
Sorry, I thought they were taking that as a given. It should be. I think it's Councillor Barnett's absolutely right. We talked about it in the discussion we had. It is more broadly Coronation as well. It should be included in there. Absolutely. All right. Is there anyone in disagreement with that? Okay. So that's the course that we'll follow. Thank you very much for your time, and appreciate all the work you put in to coming to us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like. Don't feel obliged if you don't want to. Yeah. All right. Okay, so the first report was to be 9.1. That's actually been withdrawn.
Yeah. The report on 9.1, we would like to have a further reflection on the options that we have there, and I think we would prefer. I think the view of our utilities and roading team is an option that retained ownership of that underlying land is preferable, and therefore I think we'd like to just reconsider what it is we're seeking there. So with your agreement, we'd like to withdraw that report today. Thank you.
Does anyone disagree? Okay, so we'll just withdraw that report. We don't need to resolve that, Jim. No. Okay, so we come now to reports from the community board chairs, or the community boards. I'm advised that whilst requests went out to the boards chairs if they wanted to present, they were quite comfortable with the material that's there. So first we have a report from the Wood and Sefton Community Board, pages 32 to 35. Are there any board members, any who are on that board, wish to make any comment to that report? No? Yeah, sorry, yes?
Just have a question that it's around the lake, and I know Councillor Blackie and I had a discussion on this when we were talking about this paper, and this paper says that they're going to come to the council over the lake. We don't own the lake and we don't control the lake, so therefore, I mean, I'd just like that answered clearly to the board, and until such time we have very little say over cleaning up the lake, and if I'm to be brutally honest, I don't want to bar at that lake until it is dealt with. So I'm not sure the sentiments as I read the report is that we will be the responsible people for looking after it, and we're not.
No.
And I just want that
I think
clarified if I can.
I think that point's made, and my definite view is that it's not our council responsibility. We're involved in the discussions about trying to achieve quality, but perhaps Kay, it might be helpful. You did come forward, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the board is very well aware that the council has no ownership of this lake at the moment. However, they are trying to be proactive and look into the future. We did have a workshop on the lake and the issues about the lake late last year, and they're aware that Templeton and ECAN are working and our own staff are working quite closely together to try and get all the issues on the lake. But once they've been sorted and the lake eventually does move towards us, the board is quite keen to make the lake a recreational asset for the district, in that better management of the lake, in having events, rather than at the moment it's a bit hodgepodge and it depends who gets there first gets the lake sort of thing. So I think that's what they're sort of aiming at, rather than blaming the council as such.
I'm aware of Shona's aspiration and the board's aspirations there, and that's fine to raise, which is totally their prerogative, and we are in partnership to try and get it resolved, even albeit that it's not directly our council's responsibility, but we want to see a good outcome there. So I think the point's fair. I think the way it was expressed there, I can see how Councillor Atkinson would see that point. Okay, any other questions there? You're prepared to move, Councillor Redmond? Seconded by Councillor Atkinson. Did you wish to speak to the... Thanks, Kay.
Just very briefly to say this is quite a comprehensive report, and I'm one of the council appointees on the board along with Councillor Stewart. The board has been very proactive in making submissions to various places, and in fact the council has piggybacked off the back of some of the board submissions. So while it may appear to be a small board, it certainly is proactive in a number of issues. So I'm very pleased to move this recommendation.
Seconder, do you wish to speak? I'd just like to echo those comments of Councillor Redmond. In fact, Board Chair Shona puts a lot of work into the submissions, writes them herself with some assistance from staff, but she certainly does put a huge amount of time. And so I just echo those remarks because they are a high performing board, and we're lucky to have your contributions and the board's contribution. So any further speakers? Right of reply, Councillor Redmond. Put that. All those in favour, aye. Contrary, declare that carried. 9.3, Kapoi Tuahiwi Community Board. Any questions of that report? Someone prepared to move? Move. Councillor Blakey, seconded Councillor Atkinson. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Blakey? Councillor Atkinson?
Well, again, just to thank the board there. I mean, Chris Greengrass, just like Shona, is also appears just about everywhere, and certainly puts in a huge amount of work, as does the rest of the board, I might add. And never a board that actually agrees around the table. If you have a look at the votes, often there is either one or two votes that go a different way, which is, in my view, a very healthy thing for a board and a local community board, local community to be doing. So I think it works very well, that board.
We look forward to them afterwards, Trevor. Echo those comments. Well said, Councillor Atkinson. Is a very high performing board, and we're lucky to have, in fact, with all our boards, the calibre that we do, and the chairs providing the role that they do. So any further speakers? I'll put, do you wish to exercise right of reply? Put that. All those in favour, aye. Contrary, declare that carried. 9.4, which is Oxford Ahoka Community Board, pages 41 to 45. Any questions of that report? Councillor Mealings?
I just noted in here that there's no mention in this report. It's, I guess, been an accidental omission, but there's no mention in this report about the West Ayrton Summerhill Points Road water supply amalgamation, the consultations, the work that's been put into it through the water advisory groups, the Points Road and the joint up one with West Ayrton Summerhill and Points Road, with those groups to reach an amenable solution, all of which have heavily involved the community board, and there's no mention of it. And also there's no mention in here of the work that's gone in to mitigate issues between the community and CLS for the composting facility that they want to put in there. So I think those are two very important omissions that need to be mentioned in this report.
Very good points.
Do you agree, Wendy?
We could give that feedback to staff to get the chair to consider adding in.
I thought, we're missing a few big issues that we've dealt with in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, with those additions which we've suggested, would you be prepared to move the recommendation?
Yes, with those additions.
And seconded by Councillor Doody. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Mills?
I think I already did.
Seconder?
Yes, I do. This board has gone through a few little issues, but quite frankly, the issues that have come to this board have been horrendous, and it's been a very difficult period for anybody to deal with things that were quite out of your control. So I really commend the team very much for the effort and that they've put into this. And So that, yeah, and the other thing is that we at the moment we're still going through potential for a dog, not park, but a dog recreation area. So we're just going through that part at the moment.
Changing,
so I
not
need
dog
to,
park.
well, a dog. There's a dollars and cents between a
Right.
dog park and a dog recreation.
Right.
So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further speakers? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, aye. Contrary, declare that carried. 9.5, pages 46 to 50. Any questions? Someone prepared to move? Councillor Bryan? Seconded. Councillor Barnett? Councillor Bryan, do you wish to speak? Councillor Barnett?
Exactly the same. It's a very well working board. The issue seems to go through and be dealt with quite efficiently.
Any other speakers? Councillor Atkinson?
Well, just overall, really, for all the boards, and we're at the last one, the level of reporting this year, I think, is outstanding. I think, along with our staff working alongside the boards, I think it clearly shows that the relationship there is very good, because this is very good information on all of them, to all of us.
I think they're really good comments, and particularly we should note that for a large period of this time was through COVID, and it was a really difficult time for our boards to meet and make submissions. So, and you see the level that have gone through all, there's been a significant consultation achieved through that time. So acknowledge the patience of the boards and the chairs, but also to acknowledge our governance staff for all the work that they've done to support our boards through that time. So, right of reply, should we exercise right of reply, Councillor Bryan? Do you wish to exercise? No? Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. All right, we're now up to item 9.6. So that's pages 51 to 54, tab 11.
Thank you and good afternoon all. A short report is in reference to a proposed change to the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement, which relates to food as future urban development areas, which are one of the products of the ongoing collaborative process in Greater Christchurch to identify land for new urban development. For Waimakariri, those land areas identified in the Our Space document, which is a future development strategy produced under the recent NPS for urban development, and those apply to Rangura and to Kaiapoi. The change that ECAN has put forward is via a streamlined planning process under the directions of the Minister, which effectively truncates appeals, and that streamlined planning process was put forward because of the body of work that has preceded it in terms of hearings, etc., that occurred through sort of 2018, 19, thereabouts. There is an opportunity here, should you wish to choose to do so, to make a submission on that change to the regional policy statement. The submission's closed on the 15th of February, and I've couched that as being very much one of providing information and being supportive of the process so far. And that's really because obviously there's a decision made at the local level, but then it goes through to the Minister for final decisions around is this meeting national direction, does this meet the RMA, etc. So that information may be beneficial for those parties along the way, particularly given that there's no scheduled hearing for this process. So I've outlined in paragraph 3.6 those matters that could be included in a submission. It's on page 51 of your agenda, I think, which is around how we're working on density reviews, particularly in context of the district plan review, how we are working on the structure plans, which in there is a component of density, but it's certainly an action dropping out of our space in its own right. Certainly the Waimakariri Housing Needs Report, which is a 70-odd page report that has been tabled to you previously last year by Ian Mitchell and Co., which identified a number of matters for Council to follow up on, not only through Rob Hawthorne's portfolio,
but also through district planning, mainly aimed at densities and housing typologies. And then lastly, just around downstream effects of transport relating from the development of these areas. And Council's done some work in this space in the last year or two with its transport consultants. So they might be all matters that Council could choose to make available to this process in the form of a supportive information submission, and that may indeed be helpful with the decision makers as they truck through the process which I've outlined at paragraph 4.2. So I'm happy to put forward recommendations A to C and take any questions.
Thanks, Trevor. Before you do, thank you for the speed in which you put this report together. Ordinarily there would be a draft submission, but we're quite aware of the speed in which ECAN were proposing this process. So we had a quick meeting last week, and that's why the report's here. So look, when it comes, I'm happy to circulate that draft to you all, so you see that as well. But that's the reason why it's not here, in case you're wondering. And thanks, Trevor, for pulling together a really good report very quickly. It is appreciated. Councillor Atkinson.
Trevor, can we circulate it to all boards? All boards have an interest in this, and rather than just the two that you've got listed there. Their opinion would be actually really quite good in the future, and keeping them informed. The second one that I have is around downstream effects. Why are we using still downstream effects when traffic goes both ways? And we need to know the effects of that in the future both ways. So why are we still using the terminology downstream effects?
I suspect that's because we've been used to that in more recent processes, and that's the terminology being used. The submission need not refer to that directly in any way.
So that would be good. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Barnett, followed by Councillor Doody.
Just a question on what you've said, Mr Mayor. Just wondering whether, because email can be done very, very quickly, whether we could perhaps potentially change B to say the council to review the submission and the mayor to sign off the final, or something along those lines, rather than. Yeah, it's just I was a bit worried about the wording.
Timing wise, Trevor.
I understood that. It's difficult.
What's the time frame for getting that through?
15th of February is the closing date. Council.
Okay, so it's quite tight, but I'm sure we can achieve that.
It's
achievable, Trevor?
I think so. I'm just thinking about dates.
If we make it available, it'll be available for a limited time only.
Absolutely.
And those who have will have, and those who haven't will have missed their opportunity.
That's fine.
Thank you.
I'm happy with that.
A limited time only.
Yes, excuse from out. Yes. Second question.
Sorry,
yes.
Second question. Can you just please explain to me very quickly what you mean by 3.6 when you say you've endorsed a position of achieving higher densities? I understand we're investigating it, but when you say endorsed a position of achieving higher densities, can you just explain what your intentions are on that one?
I think through our space we actually did sign up to achieving higher densities. We just haven't specified yet exactly what they will be. So
yeah, so
the commitment to achieve higher densities.
Correct. That's probably reasonably generalised. Two aspects to gyms there. Certainly out of the airspace process, we have endorsed through that process moving from 10 households to hectare to 12. And that's yet to be implemented in another process. It's not this one. And then the second thing, of course, I guess was reference to thinking about the district plan review and the new zoning provisions.
Thanks. Okay. Councillor Doody?
Mine was sort of on 3.5, mainly on the same line about for higher density living and environments, but and really where is our by the higher density, where is our larger sized sections that people might want, rather than just have a house with a fence round it? So where's our showing of that you know, especially in the community, where is our thing of having various sized sections?
Yeah, look, really interesting question. We are under continual sort of, not pressure, but a way of thinking around providing higher densities, mainly around affordability issues and those types of things. But there are urban form issues, emissions issues, transport issues, and those sorts of things. And that's even come out over the weekend with the Climate Change Commission sort of thinking as well. The general approach still is around zoning. So provide different residential zones within townships, provide rural residential zones in peri-urban areas, so 2,500 square metres, and then, as you know, we've had some discussions around rural zones as well. So back to the residential zones, certainly there is still a tool there to provide for multi-unit, and there's a medium density, and then there's a general density. Now, all of those have had lowered figures in the district plan that we're putting together now, but they are minimums. So there's nothing stopping a developer still going far in excess of that. It's just we're not requiring that. Okay, so that's where we sit at the moment. And there's been instances in the past where developers have chosen to create larger lots than 600. Kaipoi, Sovereign, those guys, they're often in the 700 category. And there's other examples around the district as well.
Further questions? Okay, so recommendation, well, there was a proposed recommendation by Councillor Barnett, something like circulate a draft submission by email to councillors to review and to then be signed off by the Mayor and be lodged with Environment Canterbury. Okay? Sorry. Circulate a draft submission by email to councillors to review and to then be signed off by the Mayor and lodged with Environment Canterbury. Yes, I was sorry, I was getting there, I was just not racing. And then, yep, you've got the last bit. For their information, for information. So just take out Kaipoi to a Hiwi Community Board and Ringa Ashley, but change it, circulates this report to all community boards for information. Is that okay? So prepared to move? Move Councillor Barnett, second Councillor Doody. Councillor Barnett.
Just speaking to that, realise that time is of the essence and we've done a lot of work in the space, so I'm pretty sure that the submission will be able to endorse our position on that, and I'm totally happy for the Mayor to sign off the final changes.
Councillor Doody.
Thank you. Yes, it's important that our position is well and truly met with our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, look, my questioning around downstream effects, being part of that 2050 and spending a few weeks doing that and banging the table about downstream effects, to find it in our own submission would actually be quite upsetting, considering that we actually did get the downstream effects removed from the 2050 plan, because we have to acknowledge that we are becoming bigger and so is Selwyn, and traffic is two-way, and otherwise all we will do is start looking at traffic flows into Christchurch, and what comes out gets very little attention, and it's as important as the inward traffic. So downstream effects does not mean both ways, it actually means the flow into Christchurch. So that's the reason for my questioning around that. I think it's extremely important.
Okay, further speakers? Rather reply, Councillor Barnett. Okay, I've got the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Thanks, Trevor. We'll see you at the good drop after. Okay, we now have matters referred from committees and community boards. 10.1. So, oh, sorry, you'd like to declare a conflict, Councillor Bryan? Sorry? I did say Councillor Bryan. No. Oh, did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I said Councillor Bryan. Pardon me. Oh, very sorry. Yeah, same ward, same diff. Apologies. One of the bees. All right, so 10.1, pages 55 to 86, tab 12. So We've got Ellie with us as well. Have you been to our table before, Ellie? You have. Okay. Oh, it's good to see you. Joanne, thank you.
Thank you. So this report recommending speed limit changes in South Kaiapoi has been referred for decision from Ohoka, Oxford and Kaiapoi Tuahiwi community boards. The report itself is seeking approval to implement a 60 km/h speed limit on the length of Main North Road, Neves Road, Wrights Road and Doubledays Road. The changes are proposed to support the activities in and around the area and also the introduction of the shared user path on Main North Road. The changes have been assessed using Waka Kotahi's Speed Management Guide, which sets out the framework for assessment as required in the Land Transport Rule. Just in terms of feedback, I would note that on speed limits, the feedback was quite split, and you can see that by attachment 1. In particular, a section of Main North Road from Neves Road north to the Kaiapoi urban limit, where I guess the feedback was, the percentage of people who agreed to that was around 43%. I guess one thing to be aware of is police and NZTA have also provided feedback, and they have both supported the change to the 60 km/h speed limit, and in particular the police noting the crash history around that area as a reason to reduce it to 60 km/h. I would also note that at the time of consultation, Ngāi Tahu did not support the changes because council had not prioritised speed through Tuahiwi village. At the council meeting on the 1st of December, council approved the 40 km/h speed limit through Tuahiwi, and the implementation of that will be carried out in conjunction with the shovel-ready projects. We haven't sought formal feedback from Ngāi Tahu at this stage on their, feedback now following the approval of that 40 km/h speed limit approval. But what we are suggesting is that the wording under recommendation E is updated to reflect that and to note that the speed limit change has since been approved, and that we'll seek a further response from NZTA, not NZTA, Runga. Just the other thing I will also note is under table 1 in the recommendation, Neves Road, this was raised at the Kaiapoi Community Board. Should not say the entire length, my apologies. That should read east of the Christchurch Northern Motorway. Happy to take.
So,
no, not at this point.
for us colleagues for question,
Yeah.
can I just suggest that I don't even know why we need E. Why is E needed in there specifically? Why don't we just remove it altogether?
I think it was added at the time because we were aware of that feedback and we hadn't finished working through the Tuahiwi speed limit. If council consideration is they would like that recommendation removed, then
That'd be up to colleagues, but my suggestion is I don't think it's needed, so we can debate that when it comes to the table shortly as the recommendations discussed. So any questions? Thank you. Councillor Edmund, Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Joanne. On page 61, the assessed and safe operating speed from Hellers to the Kaiapoi urban boundary is 80 km/h. The proposed speed limit is 60. Are you proposing any treatment on that stretch of road to make it apparent that it is not a rural road? Otherwise, I can see where Councillor Bryan may have his conflict of interest.
Yeah, and look, that's a really good question. So yes, what we're doing as part of that work is the lanes through there are very wide, so we are actually narrowing them up somewhat to try and help reinforce that 60 km/h speed limit. It was a discussion we had with NZTA staff when we went through the process of originally talking about the speed limits and whether we could get the 60 there. And that was something that they were in favour of. The other thing I think just to be aware of is there has been a consent granted for I guess development of the Waghorn Builders site, which was the old bull farm site on the western side of the road just south of Kaiapoi, and that's likely to include some work to develop that site for their building business. So we're going to be seeing, I guess, that creep further south as well. With the 80 km/h speed limit, one of the options we looked at was whether we could fit a section of 80 in there. But in terms of the meeting the land transport rules for the minimum length, it was too short, so we weren't able to get that in there for an 80 km/h. And the other thing that I think feeds into that is the feedback we get from people is they don't like speed limits that change up and down along the road. There's a preference for consistency, so that's what we've tried to get here. So yes, we will be doing some physical works and we will need to monitor, and that will include some traffic counts 6 months after implementation to make sure we're achieving what we said we would. And if we don't, then we would need to look at some further measures, and it could be things like a flush median or something else to create that sense of narrowing.
Councillor Bartlett?
Just first of all, obviously this report went to the 2 community boards. Have you got the feedback from, particularly Oxford Ahoka? I'm quite interested in their feedback.
From memory, I think, scratching of my brain now, to be honest. I don't have their specific comments.
Sure. But did they have any concerns? I'm particularly talking about the tram road one.
Yeah, I think the comments from, and Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were some comments around how far the 80 came up tram road. I think there was a reasonable level of comfort with what was proposed. There's obviously the concerns about safety on the off-ramp as that merges with tram road, and I think trying to reinforce that slower speed limit there will have some safety. Yeah.
Just around the corner to that. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. I just wanted to hear from Oxford Ahoka.
Yeah.
That's cool. Any further? Yeah. Cool. The second question I had was, I was interested in the comment from Christchurch City Council about consistency of speed limits down Marshlands Road. Can you just explain to me what is the current situation with speed limits down Marshlands Road that you're aware of?
Marshlands Road, all of it is now 60 kilometres an hour. I know there has been some unhappiness with that in different sections, probably particularly through the rural part. I think for us, the old Waimakariri River Bridge is very constrained, it's very narrow. Having the 60 km/h there from a safety perspective would be really important. I think there's a lot going on in Kaienga with the businesses and retail, the pub, and everything that's happening around there. So I can see certainly there's really good justification for the 60 through Kaienga across the bridge and through to at least Heller's entrance, because that, you know, there's a lot going on. There's traffic signals there now. There's Steve Perry and all the industrial businesses happening around there. So, yeah.
So you know as well as I do that people won't change on a speed limit necessarily. They'll change their behaviour on what the road looks like and how the road feels, the environment. What budget have we got in place to actually correspond every time we change a speed limit like this? do we have a budget in place to make changes to the road environment along that whole stretch of all of these roads that is our responsibility, to actually endorse that this would be a 60?
Yes, and we do that in part through some of our project budgets. So the likes of the cycleway budget has, we've included in there doing some work to narrow up the lanes, the speed limit signs, to make sure that that's reinforced. Through our minor safety budget, we do have some budget for repeater signs and bits and pieces. And I think that we would be likely to get really good compliance from the old Waimakariri River Bridge through to north of Neves Road. If we're going to have an area that is a slight challenge, it would be Kaiapoi through to Neves Road, so that short section. But I think because it's such a short section, if we needed to do some additional road marking or something like that, we would be able to manage that through our maintenance budgets.
Further questions? Someone for you to move? Councillor Atkinson is moving. Accept E? Yep. Well, E's on. Sorry, E's on. Sorry, it's on the summary. So it's the summary agenda at the front. So, okay, and someone for you to second. Second to Councillor Mealings. Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think you all know my views on the speed limits, and we've got to be very careful about where we're doing things and where we're not. The question that Councillor Redman raises around the environment being rural, I think that's actually well gone. We're putting a park and ride in at Keeley's Timber. There's a service station right there. Right next door to that, there's a trellis work place. Right next door to that is Steve Murphy's. And then you're on a set of lights. Then next door to that, you go down the road. There's about 4 houses, and then there is Clements Drilling, and then you've got about 20 metres and you're at Heller's driveway. And then from there on, you've got a business which is the grass growing exercise, along with Waghorn Builders. And then on the opposite side of the road, you have Winters Farm, who are there taking in and out their equipment at odd times and trying to get in and out of their driveway. So I think the environment itself is actually something that requires taking it down. I mean, I must admit that I was in a Jeep Cherokee the other day that does 100 kilometres an hour in 2.6 seconds. Very few of those around. And I don't think from the lights to the old Waimak Bridge that many of them would take up that challenge of 2.6 seconds. So it's a very short piece that we're talking about, and to be quite honest, to leave that at a different speed limit to get to the bridge would, in my view, just be ridiculous. And the other thing is, you all know my feelings on that diabolical connection of a cycleway that should have been in a different place. You're 400 millimetres off that road, and at 60 kilometres an hour, 400 millimetres in place from a tar seal, from a piece of steel hurtling down the road and driving off through 400 mils gap onto a walkway is not desirable. So if it's at 80 k's, you can imagine the mess that can happen, and it can happen at 60 k's an hour. So I think that the road environment is ready for this change. I mean, you know, Christchurch, we all know, I think, about the petition that's sitting out there with Mr Ducey and Grant Harris about the speed limits on Marshlands Road, and I think they have a very valid point on Marshlands Road, but certainly from Cheney's Corner back to Kaiapoi, there's the reason, I think, to drop this back, and I think the environment, certainly on one side of the road, definitely will dictate that, and the more cyclists that do come down there, the more visual that will be. But I mean, we've put this cycleway there. As I say, it's 400 millimetres between that and the main carriageway. You have Hellers, which people are turning left and right out of. There is a bus stop right outside there. There is traffic lights. There are trucks coming and going, and there's a pretty busy piece of turf through there. And then even once you take the traffic and put them on the motorway into the new motorway, I might add, it will still be a pretty heavily used piece of road. So I think that it's absolutely necessary in this particular case, because we have the proof in front of us that we need to drop the speed limit to something sensible, and I think 60 k's is sensible in this particular area as it stands. Well, I'll say when the cycleway officially opens, if you like.
Councillor Meanings, okay. Sorry, Councillor Redmond, and Barnett. Yeah, Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to comment on Councillor Atkinson's inference regarding my question. I was referring from Hellas to Kaiapoi Urban as being rural. Certainly the other area is not rural. And the area from Hellas to Kaiapoi Urban, in my view, as Joanne has confirmed, does need some treatment to make it look different to what I would describe loosely as a rural area. So I'm happy that that treatment is going to occur. I would hope some treatment could occur when the actual speed limit does take effect, because I think otherwise motorists will blithely cruise along there at maybe 70 or 80 k's, as the data seems to indicate. So I'm not unhappy that it is reduced to 60, but I think we need to give motorists a bit of a heads up.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'm finding it quite hard to accept all these reductions in speeds around the areas. Our cars are getting more modern, capable of crashing and more safely when they do. Unfortunately, Christmas period, 4 times more deaths on our road with all these speeds being reduced all around New Zealand. So it doesn't seem to be solving the problem of our accident rates around New Zealand. We should be more looking at driver education, as far as I'm concerned, rather than just dropping the speeds down. The road between Hellas and Kaiapoi is definitely not a 60k area, so we've got to do some major reinforcing there to make it look like it's a 60k area. Otherwise the government's going to get some good revenue if you get a policeman sitting down that road, and that's not the only road. We've got lots of road in that area. We had a presentation before about speeds on road. It's actually more education rather than the speed, because we mentioned Buckley's Road just before. It's got a 50k zone on it. The residents are moaning because they're probably doing 85 down there. So sometimes it's not actually a speed limit's going to solve it. So it's happening all over New Zealand, but I'm very reluctant to support something there that's not statistically getting followed up by rates around the whole of New Zealand coming down because of doing this type of thing. And we're getting a lot of flack by lowering some of the speeds around the areas that don't look like they're meant to be, or they shouldn't be reduced.
Councillor Barnett, we get it right this time.
Yes, it's interesting because initially I was going to vote against this when I first looked at the report, and that's why I had quite a few questions. I was particularly interested in hearing from the 2 community boards and hearing that they have supported it, knowing that these areas they're quite small stretches of road, really, in the scheme of things. And so to do 60 along them is not a significant problem for a driver. It doesn't take them that much longer to travel those roads. But my big concern is budget, because I feel like we're getting a national direction to reduce speed limits, but the only way of successfully making people travel that speed is to improve the road condition and to put in road calming measures of some sort, and yet we're getting no additional budget from Waka Kotahi. So those things to me just don't compute. So tram road annoys me, because the problem with the tram road off-ramp is an NZTA, Waka Kotahi problem. It's actually not a local council problem. It's the fact that it's a poorly designed intersection with a very small runoff and a very small merging lane. And that is actually something that needed to be solved by the people who own the motorway, which is NZTA. So I'm a bit annoyed that, you know, the fact we'll put in a 60 and then we have to look at our little tiny bit of that that's actually owned by us and say, how do we make that into a 60 when it's a rural road? When it should actually be that they should be looking after the actual problem residents are worried about is getting on and off the motorway. So that one worried me, but Councillor Mealing's reassured me the feedback from the board has said it's only a short distance. And I have no problem with people reducing the speed, but it still doesn't solve the problem of people merging on top of each other. So I don't want that problem to be overlooked. It will help, but it won't solve it. The other problem we've got is consistency around the district. If you look at the main North Road from Hellas through to Kaipoi, and then you look at Woodend-Rangiora Road, which is 80. I mean, that's not consistent. Woodend-Rangiora Road has lots and lots of entrances and lots of activity and a major 5 crossroads intersection in the middle. It's narrow, it has a cycle lane on one side, and it's 80. So, you know, we need to make sure that we're not just doing bits of roads around the district and throwing budget at it when there are other roads that also may actually need it more than that patch of road. So I had some concerns with that. River Road, your favourite. River Road. I go down there and I struggle to keep to the 50k speed limit because of the way it looks. We have not done any road treatment on the rural side of that road to make it look like a 50k road. We haven't had any money to do it, and yet we've put it at a 50k. So my concern about this piecemeal change of speed limits is the fact that we're not consistent and that we're not getting any more budget to improve the road from NZTA. I will support this because of the support from the boards and because of the arguments I've heard, but I think anyone who gets ticketed from Kaipoi to Hellas because they're not doing 60, I actually feel quite sorry for them.
I'm going to speak now and then followed by Councillor Blakey, just to say that good comments that have been made by colleagues. I actually agree with Councillor Barnett. In fact, coming into this I was a bit two-minded myself around it, and it was the process that had been gone through with the respective boards to get to this point that sort of swung my support in terms of vote. Councillor Atkinson's is right. We've got to have a consistency of speed, and it's no point in, because on one hand we were telling NZTA at the end of last year through Woodend they got it all wrong and they should have followed our community board's recommendation around that. So on the other hand, if we then start having different speeds, it would have made us look a bit hypocritical really in the respect of where we were coming from. So I do think it's really important that we do have a consistent speed, and that consistency of speed is one that suits the environment. And having a footpath coming along that part of Kaipoi now swings me in the sense that you need to have it so it's a safe environment for people to be coming down. The points around the off-ramp and Tram Road are really good points by Councillor Barnett. We had a meeting with NZTA last year following a crash on that bridge, and we are still waiting for a response there, but part of that was to consider lights, lights at that corner and safety measures. So they are still seeing what they can do there, and we're keeping pressure on NZTA in that respect to honour that commitment that they gave at that meeting. But one of the tools that they asked us to consider was to reduce speed in that area, because that will help them in terms of issues on that bridge and people coming onto there. But it's one part of that measure. The other was lights and other treatments. So you're right to raise it, Councillor Barnett, but we were part of a broader conversation there with NZTA staff and a particular individual whose name escapes me at the moment that petitioned us fairly hard on that, and rightly so, because her daughter was involved in a pretty serious crash. And my own sister, many years ago, also was involved in a very similar crash, and it was pretty devastating for her at the time. So I do recall that issue plus the other one. So the Tuahiwi matter, I'm pleased that we're not including that in there, because the matter's passed. We have been through the consultation exercise there, and we have reduced the speed, and last week we included in our long-term plan resource budget to achieve a footpath there. So, and the feedback I've had from the aunties in the Runanga, when I saw some of them at the weekend, they're very happy with that inclusion. So I don't think there would be the same reservation there that there perhaps might have once been. So look, that's all I've got to say. I'm going to support. Well, the other thing is that I do have sympathy for the petition that's currently out there with respect to Martian Road. It does not seem right that it's 60 all the way along there. And I wish those who are organising that petition all the best. Hopefully they can achieve some common sense along there. It's a very long stretch, and to have it 60 for it doesn't seem to me to be right. But that's another process for another council. But for what it's worth, I do support the direction that that's going. Right, Councillor Blakey.
I'll be brief because most of my points have been covered. The big two, of course, consistency and safety. I agree entirely with the minimum separation between the road and the cycleway. You've got to have 60 there. You can't have 80. The consistency thing again is very important. If you're chopping and changing, it's a nightmare. And the only other thing I wanted to say was Councillor Stewart, was it here or might have been at the community board, made the point about that very ugly fencing over the Kaikanui as you come in. I've had a look at that and I totally disagree. It's about a 1.5 metre high height and cyclone barrier, which you have to have because they can fall into a creek. So I just make the point, I've got no problems with the aesthetics of what you've put there.
Do you wish to exercise your seconding speech?
Look, when it comes to this, I kind of cringed a little bit at first too, because I'm a driver who likes to get up to the speed limit as quickly as possible and travel at it. So whenever we start talking about lowering speed limits, you know, I, like probably most people, cringe a little bit. But with regards to these, you know, it has been consulted. It has been really quite consulted upon. It's been really quite 6 of one, half dozen of the other in a lot of these cases. But just like the points that most of my colleagues here have made, we need, with regards to the main North Road, you know, we do need some consistency along there. I mean, we've had, when you drive down Marshlands Road into town until just recently, the speed limit changes about probably 7 or 8 times. You know, it's hard to know. And of course, there are still speed cameras parked up on the side of the road, and you really have no idea what you're supposed to be doing half the time. So actually having a bit of consistency, especially given the changes that we've got, particularly on our side of the bridge, you know, with our park and ride facilities and the very, very popular cycle route. Everybody that's been anywhere near there recently has seen just a massive volume of cyclists coming through and using that. So I think we do need to keep those guys safe as well. With regards to Tram Road, again, that is a safety thing. It's, you know, I've had constituents approach me about it with some major safety concerns about that stretch of road. And the part of Tram Road that we want to lower to 60 is only a very short stretch, and it really does just take in the most dangerous part of it and allow us a little bit more leeway to implement more safety measures, I guess, until something a little bit more permanent is done. But if nothing else, you know, because that merge lane onto Tram Road is too short. You know, if you're doing 100, it's not a merge lane. It's a slow down and hope you don't get taken out lane. So, you know, before you hit the lamppost. So I don't really have a problem with that either. And looking at the current mean operating speeds that on page 61 that we have here, Doubledays Road, for instance, we're talking about dropping the entire road length from 100 to 60, which sounds pretty extreme, but if you look at the current mean operating speed, it's 45 to 49 kilometers. So, you know, nobody's even going to get up to the 60 anyhow. So it's not, you know, it looks like people are losing a lot, but they're not. And by and large, the other mean operating speeds are within reasonable parameters as well. So whilst it sounds pretty extreme to drop all these limits to 60, they are consistent with the government's Road to Zero program. And I don't think they're actually as extreme as they look on paper. So I'm happy to support this. Anything that keeps our people safer, then great. And I'll just have to remember, like many others, to not have such a heavy foot whenever I drive through some of those areas.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Atkinson, rather reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, clearly this is something that people hold pretty dear to their heart. They like to drive their cars, and I think Councillor Mealings is right. A lot of us, in fact, I wish more people on the motorway would get to the speed a hell of a lot quicker, so you merge properly. However, look, you know, some of the concerns around spending extra dollars between the exit of Kaiapoi to Hellas Corner, I think, are reasonably invalid. There are businesses along there, and yes, they may be look as though they're rural businesses, but there is now a 2-metre path there with, as I say, a 400mm gap between that and the road. It is very obviously changed. There is curb down there, concrete curb, which gives you a separation from that road. It is, Councillor Mealings just hit the nail on the head. Every day you go down there, there is cyclists on that cycleway. The environment is hugely different once all those cones and things have gone to what it was yesterday when it was Winter's Paddock and no one was coming and going from a business which is now Waghorns, and no one was coming and going from the places at the grass place. We always forget what that's called. Glenn Scott's place. There we are.
Ready law.
Yeah, ready law. Easy law. Anyway, coming and going from there. So it is a hugely different environment to what it was 12 months ago. And I wouldn't like to see us actually spend mega dollars on there. I want to see us test that people are sticking to 60 k's, because what we're talking about here a lot of the time is peak times, particularly Saturdays and Sundays, where people are on the cycleways and people may not be commuting, but they're actually looking at paddocks, if you like, to see if there's sheep or cattle in them. I think it's extremely important that we do take note of what has changed now, and I'll be really interested to see what the natural behaviour of people is down there. I think it is very different to Rangiora Wood End Road. I have absolute sympathy that we need the consistency, but you're talking about 220 metres as opposed to 2.2 kilometres. Those figures won't be right, but you get my meaning. It's 10 times the distance down Rangiora Wood End Road than it is between the exit of Kaiapoi and the and Hellas Meats. Again, on there, the things that Councillor Blackie talks about, the new cyclone fence that's there, the new wooden fence that's going to go right down the side of where the drain is that exists there now. They are all very different features in that stretch of road than have ever been there before. Now, I still think the cycleway's in the wrong place. It is there, it needs to operate, and we need to make sure that people are using that safely. The other end for me, from there on, from Hellas on, there's just no question. It's full of businesses. I mean, I forget, my children when they were young used to try and count Steve Murphy's trucks while they were there, and they could never get round the corner. By the time they got round the corner and onto the motorway, they'd lost count and could never count them all. So that tells you how many trucks are in that yard and how many crossings at twice a day minimum there is for those trucks. So that area, along with the timber company, which I'm understood is growing, plus all the other businesses that are down that Wrights Road, then on top of that our park and ride, the environment is just massively different. Doubledays Road, no question. I used to live down there when I was a child, and Woodford Glen was down there then, but now it's a very different beast to what it was then. And you can still see tailbacks on big nights and during the day trying to get into Woodford Glen. So you're not going to be moving 60 k's anyway. In fact, most of the time you're lucky if you're moving 10. So, you know, all of those things put into this particular piece of road, I think it's absolutely important that we support this and that this happens. I don't think this sets precedent for our other roads. I think that if we take the individual roads like this and look at them individually, I think we'll make sensible decisions around what it is, the speed we need to do.
Thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Now to item 11, which is the health and safety report. Mr. Farmer, pages 87 to 98.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Monthly report. No major issues to identify. Progress with refurbishment of the Rangiora Service Centre is progressing well and pretty much in accordance with the timetable that was developed. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions that people may have.
Any questions? We have a recommendation moved by Councillor Atkinson, seconded by Councillor Doody. Would you like to speak, Councillor Atkinson? Councillor Doody? Any other speakers? No right to reply. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. We have a series of committee minutes for information. Someone prepared to move the recommendation 12.1 to 12.5 be received. Councillor Barnett, seconded Councillor Doody. Any discussion? All those in favour, aye. Contrary, carried. Come to item 13, which is the Community Board minutes for information. The recommendation there is 13.1 to 13.5 be received for information. Someone prepared to move that. Councillor Mealing, seconded Councillor Redmond. Just on those particular Community Board minutes, is there anything any board members in those areas would like, or councillors in those board areas like to highlight? No. Any discussion? Put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. No reports of information, no correspondence. Next is my diary, 16.1, pages 188 to 192. Any questions? There's a recommendation, someone prepared to move. Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Atkinson. Do you wish to speak? Any further speakers? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Okay, portfolio updates. The first is iwi relationships. We haven't had a meeting of Mahi Tahi yet this year. It's coming up soon. But I have had discussions with both Tanya, who's the new chair of the Runanga. I've got a meeting coming up with Jay, who's the going to be the new general manager. He's been officially welcomed onto the Rhine. He's in his role, and all accounts a really impressive guy. Actually, was I think had a high-ranking role with Gatwick Airport, I understand, and some other corporate experience. So he's going to bring a real well, he's got the potential to make a real difference down at with our Runa, and I'm very excited about that potential with him, and also for both Tanya. I've also had a meeting with Tamari separately. Very pleased that he'll be relieving their workload considerably. He's to become the third representative from Runa on our Mahi Tahi committee, which is also good. As I mentioned earlier, I had caught up with some of the aunties at the TKTT 10th anniversary, and they're very pleased with our inclusion in our draft long-term plan for the footpath. In fact, the words by Auntie Joan expressed to me was that Denise came back and she still hasn't stopped smiling. So that's really great that it's making that difference in terms of our relationship there. We're moving the annual Hui date. There was some dates being suggested, but Sarah will be in touch with that. But it's to time with Jim H's appointment, and to be after that. It was scheduled to be about the 21st, I think, of March. There's no point in looking at that around that date when it's only about a week or so later that Jim will be in his role. So it seemed logical that we shifted that date, and that was in agreement with Tanya and others as well. So, but the relationship I think is going as well as it can be, and I feel pretty optimistic about the year ahead. Looking forward to our next Mahi Tahi, and obviously our annual AGM. Any questions? Canterbury Water Management Strategy. Sandra's not here today, so obviously won't be an update there. International relationships, Deputy Mayor.
Passchendaele meeting, first one 29th of February, so not too much happening with China at the moment, so we'll wait till then.
Okay. Regeneration, Councillor Blicky.
Not very much to report. The pontoon meeting and the river area meeting and the harbour master meeting the mayor and I covered off this morning, so that's done and dusted. Softball diamond opens on Saturday if you're not running away for the weekend. It's in the middle of Kaiapoi's Waitangi thingy, but that's okay. So it's sort of on top of another event, but that's all right. 12:15 is the opening for that for half an hour if you're around in the area on Saturday. I went down to McIntosh's Hole and just had a look at the ECAN project on the stop bank there. 3 bigger diggers all busy piling rocks in there, so that's proceeding at pace. It's partly anti-tsunami, partly anti-Waimak digging the corner out project. That's going well. That's all I've got to report.
Any questions of Councillor Blicky? Thanks. Next is climate change and sustainability. Councillor Mealings.
Sorry, I actually have a little bit to report. Just a few things, I guess, have been happening. The Regional Climate Change Working Group met in December to work on that detailed regional climate change risk assessment. And now that has been adopted, the next step is to get Tonkin and Taylor to come back in and do a detailed risk assessment for the region, just to follow up on that first pass high-level assessment they did at the end of 2019, which will take into account the district-specific issues. Like, for instance, coastal erosion isn't really a problem here in Waimak, but it is for Timaru and Waimate. So it's something that's more specific to us. Their next steering group meeting will be at the end of February to monitor the progress of that report. The Youth Council are looking into picking up work on an eco pledge, which had been a project started by one of our grad students who since moved on. So they want to pick that up possibly as one of their environmental projects, which is quite cool. The council sustainability champions met on the 25th of Jan, and we got updates on the internal 3-bin system being implemented in our buildings, and the allocation of staff time for sustainability matters, because that can be a bit of a sticking point with some of the departments. The progress of our energy audits and proposed changes to our internal catering policy. So you guys would have noticed, like, on our long-term plan thing, like the catering stuff looks a little bit different, less plastic, less, junk. Let's see, I'll just skip a few bits here. Progress against the actions that are in the organizational sustainability strategy and action plan will be reported to Audit and Risk on the 16th of Feb meeting. And the proposed changes to the internal standard reporting template will now have a prompt for climate impacts and sustainability, which is great. That's been circulated as a draft on the 25th of Jan, and that's scheduled to be considered by the management team in February. I have had a look at it and I can't find it anywhere. I'm not sure where I put it, but it looked good to me. But I'm quite looking forward to actually seeing something finally be at the bottom of our reports that actually means that people need to, think about that and tick that box before they send a report out, because it needs to be in everything that we do. So bring it on. Yesterday, I attended a Zoom meeting with a lady from up in Auckland, Greylands Koha Cup project, about how that works. It's like a coffee cup project that looks to get rid of takeaway cups, basically, and how, their learnings and how we can roll something like that out in the waimakariri. And what they're doing is really quite cool, because it's really a great inclusive community initiative with some good potential for us to use down here. So I'm sure you'll hear more about that later. And also, Jeff Meadows and Mike O'Connell and I met with ENC yesterday, just about our sustainability strategy, what it is, how it works, and how they can get started on their own strategy and how they might also be able to help our steer our local businesses in the same direction toward more sustainable practices. So that was a really productive meeting. And just as a parting comment, I'm sure you've all heard. We all know that the Climate Commission's report was just released on Sunday. There's no surprises on the direction of travel there. It's good that we've already started work on climate change and sustainability here in our council. And while we're off to a good start, we've got good strategy and policies and that in place, but we need to make sure we adhere to it. What we decide around this table and what we ultimately will be held responsible for must be implemented. It's got to follow through to what our business units and our staff do on the ground, or we're all going to pay dearly for that, not just in carbon terms, but financially while we're playing catch up and reputationally. So I think that's a risk that we all need to consider and make sure that those things actually happen, and back up our words with action. So anyway, that's it from me. Thanks.
Thanks, Nikki. Any questions? And of course, you're going to the Canterbury Mayoral Forum regional, Mayoral Forum area discussion next week. So,
yes, yes, that is coming up. Yes, yeah. Indeed.
So that's all the councils from within the Canterbury Mayoral Forum area coming together with representatives from each of their. They've got that sort of portfolio lead to come together and talk about climate change issues. So.
Yep, that is on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
I think there's something else too, actually, but I somehow missed it in my report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. All right. Business promotion and town centres. Councillor Ward.
Well, it's been Christmas time and things have been a bit quiet in January, but just prior to Christmas we did have a meeting with our lighting consultant, and he presented some ideas on lighting for Kapoi and Ringura, which looked really exciting, but we'll be taking that to the community boards to have a look at the suggestions and then coming back with some ideas. So that's work in progress. Of course, I've also been involved with the Kapoi South Mixed Use workshops, which of course you're all starting to get a feel of today, and we'll get to see the whole picture next week. Also the refurbishment discussions, and we're looking at on the east wing a councillor's space or councillor's room. And the idea at the moment, getting some prices to split the safe room in half, but pushing the wall out east to include window outlook, and with refreshment facilities for councillors moving forward, because it was decided that with the large enlargement of the council chambers that there was really needs to be a space for councillors to retreat to and to use as a meeting room. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ward. Just on that last point, there's a brief on the briefing agenda for next week. There will be an update from Rob on that particular matter and for your input at that point. So, any questions of Councillor Ward? Councillor Doody?
Thank you. Just talking about the safe, is that heavy concrete or what is it?
Well, yes, it is, because I went and actually had a look myself the other day, but it is possible, and Rob will give the update next week, but all that space is no longer required. So effectively where Rosie sits now is actually was a hole in the wall originally, so there's a possibility of going through there, creating a connection, taking the backing end out, which will then open it up to a window space, which would also enable a kitchenette in there as well. So you'll see that next week, and any colleagues that want to visualise that, we can arrange a viewing at some point, because it's and apparently with Councillor Atkinson was on the panel, sort of lighting that you've got these days will lighten that fairly well. I was concerned that you'd end up with lack of Wi-Fi and that, but there's boosters that can be put in there, because it's like a bunker now. But it'll be a very safe, be probably one of the safest areas in the council to be in. But next week that'll you'll be able to see that for yourself. Okay. I have no questions. No urgent general business. Now move to matters to be considered with the public excluded. I'll move the recommendation. Someone repeat the second. Councillor Blackie. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that